Welcome to the Theory of Conspiracy. Don't adjust your headset, you listen to three northern lads from the UK discussing mainstream and non-mainstream conspiracy, talking about our own beliefs and challenging each other's.
Hello fellow TheoCons, that's my nickname for you listeners. I'm just having a little stroll at lunchtime, thinking about the recording from last night. If you like what you're listening to, or you want to suggest topics for future episodes of the podcast, or you just want to follow us to find out when new episodes are coming out, you can find us at TheoConPod. That's at TheoConPod. That's on Twitter, Instagram, and you can also find the Theory of Conspiracy on Facebook. So check that out. Please don't forget to like the podcast, give it a review, give it some feedback, anything you like, good or bad. We'll take it all on board. Especially if you don't agree with any of the points that we're saying, we'd love to hear alternative opinions, and it really boosts and helps the podcast. Anyway, that's it from me. We'll get into the meat and two veg.
Hi, I'm Nick, and I'm the truther.
Hi, I'm Andy the Skeptic.
Hello, I'm Carlos. I believe.
Welcome to episode 2. This podcast, we're going green. We're going to take a look at the hype at the moment around veganism and how meat is destroying the planet. So that we're totally transparent with the listener, I should mention that both myself and Nick are vegetarians, and Carlos is an omnivore. At the end of the last decade, there was a big push in plant-based diet documentaries and TV shows. In the UK, these included, amongst others, Food Uncovered Goes Vegan, Dirty Vegan, and Meat: A Threat to the Planet. And then you've got documentaries on the likes of Netflix, such as Cowspiracy and Game Changers, and that's just two I can think of. But are the facts and figures being hurled at us in these documentaries all they make out to be, or is there a hidden agenda? Because the three of us have not watched Game Changers, we decided that we'd all watch it and discuss it for this episode. So why Game Changers? Well, none of us had watched it, so it would be fresh in our mind. When I told people I'd gone veggie last year, a lot of people asked me if it was because I'd seen Game Changers. So that's spiked my interest into one day watching it and seeing what it was all about. So that's enough waffle from me. So Nick, Carlos, without going into detail of the documentary, what are your first impressions? Are the facts and figures overwhelming? At any point, do you take stock and question any of it, or were you just happy to sit back and take it all in without question? So let's go to Carlos, because he's a meat eater. He can go first.
Hello, everyone. Hello, boys. Yes, it's one of them things where obviously, with two friends on the podcast, I've turned to veganism. My two nieces have turned to veganism. And it's one of them things where I watched it and I started questioning a lot of things that the way I've been living and the way I've been sort of like observing food and eating food. But then I just thought it's too good to be true. And that's why I thought there could be some kind of hidden agenda, because if Game Changer is 100% true, then we all need to turn to veganism. Every single person on this planet needs to turn to it. So that's the thing. Whereas it looks on the outside, it looks impressive. It's fantastic. It's like our Concorde moment. We've arrived, but then like Concorde, there's some hidden problems, and that's the bit what I start looking at is the hidden agenda. Well, because clearly, if it's perfect and Game Changer is to believe, then we should all be vegan on this planet. Every single person should be a vegan. So that's what I want to look into. There's clearly some hidden agendas.
All right, you think there's hidden agendas in it. What about you, Nick? What did you think?
One up for the vegans, Carlos. Thanks for going on. Andy and I are not vegans. We're vegetarians.
Vegetarians, right?
Yeah, so the whole world can get away with being vegetarians rather than vegans, and even occasional meat eating, if the agricultural industry was to pay its way, in terms of actually treating their waste and all the rest of it that would make meat a lot more expensive and a lot more of a luxury. So I'm all for that kind of thing. So yeah, I hadn't seen Game Changer, so I thought I had, but when I started checking it out, no, I hadn't seen it before, and I thought it was all pretty interesting stuff. You know, it seemed really reasonable to me. The gladiators being vegetarians, all these athletes giving testimony to vegetarians, and also kind of when he explained it that ultimately where the animals are getting their energy from is from the grass and the grain that they're eating, and they're just the middlemen to us getting our energy from the animal. Kind of made a lot more sense that, yeah, why cut out the middleman and just eat the grain and the greens. It seems pretty simple to me now. So yeah, I'm all for it. It seemed pretty reasonable.
Yeah, that's the basic message anyway, isn't it? Okay, so for those of you that have not seen Game Changers, it's the story of a UFC fighter, James Wilkes, discovering the benefits of veganism. For those of you that have not seen Game Changers, it's the story of a UFC fighter, James Wilkes, discovering the benefits of veganism, but they insist on referring to it as a plant-based diet throughout the documentary, and not say that it's veganism.
Why do you think you can't differentiate the two? Like,
No, I think it's just a bit weird that why don't they just call it veganism? Because it
well,
is.
it's not though. He's on about a plant-based diet. So veganism, he wouldn't include like honey and stuff as a vegan, but on a plant-based diet, if he wanted honey, he'd chow down some honey. So that's the difference. I don't think he's trying to mislead people. I think there's a difference.
Oh, do you?
Yeah,
I didn't realize it. I suppose vegans as well won't use like leather products in
yeah,
shoes and
lots of
clothes and
stuff like
stuff.
that, man. Yeah,
I
so
suppose
yeah,
so. So maybe is why they call it a plant-based diet.
yeah.
Okay, well, when I was watching the documentary, I made a note of a few different areas. We've already sort of loosely mentioned a couple of them. So the first ones for me was who the people that made and produced the documentary. There's the claims that the Romans were vegetarian. There's the athlete testimonies. There's the experiments they do and the teeth profiles. I've lumped in with the experiments. There's facts, just the facts and figures they start throwing at you about the different elements that are in meat compared to proteins, etc., that are in that are in plants and that are also in meat. And then obviously at the end it turns on to the obviously the environmental impact. So alarm bells for me, my skeptic alarm bells, as soon as the film started and you started getting the credits of it was made by a company called Refuel Productions right at the start, and something to do with the Robert and Cheryl Greenberg Trust and the Roddenberry Foundation. So I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Refuel, that sounds a bit food producty. I'll look into that. Um, did any of that ring any alarm bells with you two guys, or were you not bothered?
No, man, somebody's got to pay for it. Like, I think most research is paid for by somebody with a vested interest in the results in some way or another. Very little research is ever paid for by, philanthropists, I guess. It would be different if they were promoting smoking, or something like that, or something where there's, or, excessive alcohol consumption. If they were saying like stuff that you're thinking, oh yeah, but they're just saying, you know, eat less meat, eat more plants. Ultimately, everybody's going to benefit from that.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that. And that there's not McDonald's is not going to pay for that research. I mean, but they do. To be fair, they pay for a fair bit of research. But I'm sure, yeah.
So when you saw the names of the directors and the executive producers and stuff, so you got James Cameron, Susie Cameron, his wife, Jackie Chan, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Any of them spark anything with you? Do you know any history of those guys and how they feel about vegetarianism, veganism, plant-based?
Well, I think they, judging by by their interest in it, they've either funded it or they've had some input in it in some way. then I guess they are promoters of it, maybe. But to what extent, no. I'd never known either, any of them was. No way did I ever think for a nanosecond that Arnold Schwarzenegger was was survived on a plant-based diet.
That was new to me. He used to eat meat. He definitely used to eat meat.
Well, I mean, but you look at Conor McGregor as well. Was he not in? Is he not converted now after, poo-pooing it after that, and then seeing that how this?
I
Is
don't
he
know if
not?
he has.
I'd like to see if he still is, consumes as many steaks as he does before his fights.
Schwarzenegger, that threw me completely off because I associated him with chicken and protein and meats and being obviously he's the Austrian, so big meat eater, sausage eater, stuff like that. So I was quite surprised when I seen him. I thought, okay, that's the one what got my attention when Arnold Schwarzenegger. I thought, you know, Mr. I think he was 7 times Mr. Olympic or Mr. Universe, and for this guy to go from like the ultimate kind of physical specimen to talking about plant-based diets, I thought, wow, this. It got that's what it got. I'll be honest with you, it has got my attention. Do I believe all of it? No, but it's like it's got my attention when someone like Arnold Schwarzenegger's converted. But then again, I don't know if there's a hidden agenda though. I don't. He could have. That's it. I don't know. He could have shares into that company.
So what do you know, Andy? Then
Right. Okay. So talking about hidden agendas, then. So these are the things I found out about not only the producers but some of the doctors and stuff that were giving evidence in the documentary. I'll just run through them. So James Cameron, who's the executive producer, he's the founder and CEO of a company called Verdant Foods, which is an organic pea protein company with the goal of becoming the largest pea protein facility in North America. Susie Cameron, also a founder of Verdant Foods. Jackie Chan, passionate vegan. Arnold Schwarzenegger, ex-meat eater, passionate vegan. And then going on to the medical professionals, you've got Dr. Dean Ornish. He leads vegan retreats and sells online programs. Dr. Aaron Spitz, he's the author of the Penis Book, a plant-based book on penile function. You got Dr. Vogel, author of the Pritkin Edge, another plant-based book. Dr. Cadwell Esselstein, he's the author of Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease Cookbook, which is a plant-based lifestyle and cookbook and DVDs. Dr. James Loomis, contributor of Forks and Knives. I think there's a documentary called Forks and Knives. But it's also a plant-based meal planning service and publication company. I've only got 3 left. Dr. Scott Stoll, he's author of Alive and Kristin's Healthy Kitchen Recipes. Dr. Kim Williams, a vegan cardiologist. And Dr. Columbus Bastille is another contributor to the Forks Over Knives planning service. So all those people I've mentioned have all got a vested interest in getting more people to eat more veg, basically.
but you see that as some kind of negative. I don't get that. Who else would you expect to be involved in a production like this, other than people that have got either? A lot of these people might just do it for the health benefits and might passionately believe that the human race would have less cancers and be a much better place if people just moved away from something which is potentially harmful and moved towards more beans and greens type and grains type, diet. I didn't just because I never see that as a negative, but you're really suspicious of it. But yeah, there's always going to be an element of that.
Well, there isn't. But at this point, I'm not saying it's a negative. But when you start looking at the rest of the stuff we're going to talk about, you got to take into fact that the actual makers of this are biased toward veganism. So,
But they're not though. You keep saying veganism is plant-based diet.
Well, all right, plant-based diets.
But don't you think, Nick, when people are promoting this and they stand to make a profit from it, I understand we don't work for charities. People need to make
But they
a profit.
won't listen. I am a fan of that now. Let's say I watch it and I think, yeah, I've not got a problem with anything on there, and it seems to be delivering a positive message, right? Not one of those people you've listed is going to benefit. I'm not going to buy any of their books, any of their supplements further than their interest and my interest in this movie, I'm not gonna interact with any of those people in any way. So they're never gonna, and that's going to be the case for 99% of the people that watch stuff like
Nick,
Game Changers.
you won't, Nick, but because you don't do social media, the other people will go, oh, I'll go to his Facebook page, I'll go to his Twitter page, I'll go to his Instagram page. Then they've got you.
Go on then. What's your problem with the Gladiators?
Okay. So my problem with the Gladiators, when I looked into it, is it's not an actual study. They mention, oh, it's a study on gladiators, blah blah blah. It's actually an article by Andrew Curry, and in the article it says that the bone test can degrade and change or become contaminated over time, depending on what the other materials they're laying next to. Then they go on and do that flame test, don't they? Where the flame changes red blue,
Yeah.
depending on how much strontium's present in the bones. If you have a look at those stats, the levels of strontium in a carnivore are between 100 and 300 parts per million. In an omnivore, they're 150 to 400 parts per million. So there's quite a big overlap. And in a total herbivore, it's 400 to 500. So the maximums on the scales on all three of them is carnivore 300, omnivore 400, herbivore 500. So there's a lot of overlap between that. It's a very impressive little flame testing, but it doesn't actually tell you the levels. So I don't know. I was just a bit suspect with that. Also, apparently they did eat a lot of plants, but I don't think they ate all they ate was plants. I don't know. Not sure.
I don't suppose as a culture it was overwhelmingly. I would think in Western Europe, where it's different in places like India where they're mostly, and Asia where they're mostly vegetarians. Europeans have been mostly a meat eating culture for forever.
Yeah.
So
Go on, Carlos. What were you going to say?
It's no the obviously the Romans were, because I looked into, because I was actually talking to a person who is a proper full vegan, and I was talking about the Roman Empire, and he says how they introduced over I think 48 plant based foods over to United Kingdom when they came over in 79 AD.
I would also think as well, if you go back 1,000 years ago, let's say to these Roman times, then diets were pretty poor. I think they'd be happy to eat anything. I don't think they could be as fussy as we are now. I would think they would, for 90 odd percent of the people, and I just make these numbers up because they seem about right in my head, that they would just, whatever was coming their way, if it was pig or it was beans or it was anything, fish, they would eat it. They wouldn't be fussy. They wouldn't. I don't think anybody back then would turn a nose up at a meal, whatever it was.
But the key element to this is they introduced nearly 50 plants to United Kingdom plant-based. So clearly they knew that we were probably living on probably pigs and what was and boar, whatever, obviously cows and stuff like that.
Back in them days when you've got to mobilise an army like that, you can't lump all that food around with you. What you can do
Take grain.
is you
Throw
can
it.
take grain with you, and that's what happened. It
Mhm.
wasn't a conscious effort to go, they're eating
Yeah,
meat
they're
over
not eating
there, we
enough.
better take some
Yeah,
plants.
that's it. Yeah.
They just took stuff with them that wasn't indigenous to Europe and England, and that's how it came across. Going back to whether it was cavemen, Romans, whatever, our ancestors ate whatever was available and whatever they could get their hands on, just to enable them to get to reproductive age and continue the species.
Right. What's the next subject then?
All right, so the athletes. So so after he bangs on about the Roman diet, he introduces us to several athletes who talk about their switch to a plant-based diet and how it's helped them succeed in their particular sports.
Yeah, well, it worked for him, didn't it? And a few other people, I guess. Yeah.
All these athlete opinions are just purely anecdotes. Where are the thousands of similar anecdotes from omnivore athletes, all at the top of their field and feeling the best they've ever felt?
Yeah, but that they could get on there, and then if they went and done this diet and then they came on a month later and said, I feel better, you would just poo-poo that again. You would say, well, you're in that camp now. Your testimony is no good either.
It's not scientific at the end of the day, because they don't know how they would have been had they stuck to their diet, had they just made some changes, kept eating a little bit of meat.
Well, but that's not unfair, because if their personal best had been static for a long time and they had still been competing, and the only thing they had changed about their training was their diet, and then their personal best had increased, just saying that had happened, then you could say your testimony then would be, the only change I've made is my diet, and it has had a 10% improvement on my personal best.
Not one person said, I was doing the same thing day in, day out, and I changed my diet. Not one person said that.
I think they all said their personal best had improved. What is it you're saying they hadn't said that I had said?
You don't know if they had upped their training at the same time, changed their... Because
If they'd made any other changes. I can't remember that would definitely be a strong case.
No one mentioned that. My point is, with those 4 or 5 people that said that,
You could have made other
where's the
changes as
50?
well.
Where's the 50 other athletes that could have told you the exact same story? The only difference is they were still eating meat.
What, that their personal
They,
best had improved and they had won events?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I'm saying is, if it was a balanced program, they'd have one of them say, I've switched to this diet and I've done that, and then you would have a meat eater going, well, I still eat meat and I've done this. What's the difference? If there was any merit to it. What I'm saying is, there's no merit to it. It's all personal opinion.
I don't agree. I think it does add merit. And I also think that the only way you would, that these people are there telling their stories because they achieved the pinnacle of whatever they were doing, or they were the best at whatever they were doing, whether they're retired, or at some point. And they're saying, to get to that, for me to be that best person that I could be and achieve this, then it was, I'm happy to attribute a part of that to the plant-based diet. And that's all they're going on to say.
But for every one of them, you'll get someone that eats meat say exactly the same
Yeah,
thing.
but you'll never know if that person could have got a better score had he tried moving to the...
You will never
plant-based.
know if those plant-based diet athletes would have got a better score had they also included egg and fish and a bit of chicken, because you've got to look at what they're not saying at the same time.
Only if you're a skeptic like you.
I do think it's a bit of an anecdote, because they could have used 10 athletes who have done it and they've improved, but it could be the next 5,000 people who've used it and it's not improved. The thing is, the pool of people who have done it is too small. Like Andy said, it needs to be a bigger pool. Like if they did 1,000 people but only benefited 50 people, is it still worth doing?
The next thing they introduce us to is a couple of experiments in the documentary, the endothelial function, where they take the blood and the blood samples after eating a meat burrito, and then a blood sample after eating a bean burrito, and they show you that it's cloudy, and they're telling you that you've got stuff hanging around in your blood for 8 hours. And then there's another experiment to do with guys putting things on the willies and seeing if the erections change and stuff like that.
Yeah.
A couple of things I found out is that first of all, that the endothelial function one was a study by the Hass avocado brand. So again, you've got to watch out for cherry picking and things happening there when they paid for that study. Neither of the studies are actually conclusive. With both experiments, there are multiple factors that can affect the results. First of all, there were small scale experiments, and again, they don't go into like the previous medical history of the participants, the physical activity prior to the experiments. And there's tons of other things that can affect your blood and performance and blood vessels and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah, it could have an effect. But what if it didn't? What if the conditions were the same on both days? When you want to poo-poo a study like that, you can say gravity. The position of the moon is in a different position. So everything, the different position of the day. There's tons of stuff where you can always say there's going to be a variable. But definitely, when you eat stuff, the impacts on your blood and the chemicals, stuff and found in your blood, is instantaneous in some elements. And in others, like this, can take a few hours to go through the body and be measured and see a change in.
So in both experiments, you got 3 guys and blah blah blah. Very small. And he must have done it to other people to come up with a theory, and they don't mention how many people had this experiment to prove it. However, just by doing the same experiment, just by making a couple of changes, he could actually find out if is it his bias towards his own stats, because that's the trouble, So that guy, he's got a book about penises out, so he's got a vested interest in finding some stats that back his book up, right? He could make a couple of changes to the study, right?
What, like use women?
First of all, do it on more people, right, to get a bigger sample, right? Then introduce like a random control trial, and use double blinding. So you have to randomize the data so that again he can't cherry pick and go, oh well, this and that and blah blah blah, because he's biased towards it. So you double blind him as well. Carlos, right? This one's coming to you then, right? Because you have previously told me about your theories of teeth when it comes to meat eating. So let me direct one this at you. One of the things they brought up in Game Changers was they looked at the teeth of different types of animals. They looked at they basically said that the human teeth are not designed to eat meat, because our canines are a poor example of the ripping teeth needed to slice meat that you see in carnivores, and instead we have what the film refers to as morse and pestle set of teeth, which are designed for making like a pesto rather than chewing meat. So go, Carlos.
Well, obviously I've seen that section as well in the Game Changer, and yes, and maybe that's what our ancestors discovered: fire. We need this meat, but clearly the way we're designed is probably we struggle the way, because obviously, but you forget we've got one of the strongest bites in the animal kingdom. We've got a big bite. So clearly, if we're just designed to grind, why is our bite one of the best? So clearly, that's where we probably discovered fire. Fire, we realized, if you cook this meat, it's softer on the mouth. But by doing that, we get more protein. Obviously, we didn't know back then, but the protein helped us develop more as a species. So that's why I seen that report, and they showed where the teeth were used to shred and sort of like destroy the meat, whereas our teeth were designed to crunch. So obviously, crunching is for bones as well. We need to crunch bones as well.
So Nick, then, short and sweet. Anything on teeth? That teeth comparison?
No, all pretty reasonable to me. Yeah, our primary function is not to tear meat off the bone. That's how our jaws have evolved over the last 3.5 million years. So, it's I think this is just evolution in play. It's kind of, I don't think there's many species whose diets changed as much as ours in the last few 100,000 years. So
I saw something quite a while ago that also cooking vegetables, actually certain veg can, like your potatoes and stuff, starches, and yeah, I can't remember what it was. They were digging something up that grew near the shore, and they were eating the roots of it. But that by cooking it, it releases more calories. So it wasn't just meat that fire changed. The only thing that comparison proved is that humans are not carnivores, because we're not carnivores. We're omnivores.
Omnivores, we eat both.
Exactly. So that's why we don't have teeth that are slicing teeth, because we're not lions. We don't just exist purely on meat, do we? So, all right. So throughout all this part of the documentary, there's loads of like facts and figures getting thrown up, and they also then start moving on to start discussing about where your protein comes from, and how animals are the middlemen. They tell us that plants have got an average of 64 times percent of antioxidants that are found in animal foods, and then they go on to they briefly mention the vitamin B12. They look at some studies, and basically they come to conclusions and say actually plant eaters and meat eaters do not get enough B12, and basically everyone should take a supplement. All the stats and everything about all that antioxidants and everything, it's, you know, without having to go and research every single one and get your own doctorate, it's just one of them things where it's just like, yeah, you're starting to blow me with a bit of blow my mind with a bit of science and blah blah blah. So yeah, I don't really have much to say other than that.
Yeah, no, I don't have a problem with it. Again, just another element to the story, isn't it?
One of the most compelling arguments for me in the whole thing, to be honest, and probably this is down to my personal view, towards the end they start talking about the environmental effects, and there's a lot of figures on this one. I'll just run through some. So they say that 3/4 of agricultural land is used for livestock, so basically 83% of farmland is used for livestock, yet it only provides about 18% of the world's calories. Animals consume on average 6 times more protein than they produce. They then go into the water and waste of the animal products. So they quote that one hamburger, it takes 2,400 liters of water to produce one hamburger. 27% of humanity's water goes into producing animal foods. In the US, farm animals produce 50 times more waste than humans per year, and animals account for 15% of global man-made emissions. And to put that into perspective, that's the same as all emissions from all forms of transport in the world. They then tell you that going vegan will save 1 million litres of water per person per year.
But them figures are quite scary.
Yeah, the figures are quite scary. So being a skeptic, yes, I tried to find a source of those stats, and I tried to look at, you know, similar stats that other people were saying from different sources to see if they backed up. But it was so difficult because every person or everything you looked at, you had to question: am I looking at the real deal, or you know, is this someone who's independent, or have they all, you know, whatever I'm reading now, even though it's from a different source, has it got a different agenda? So it was just a bit of a minefield. But so I started to just read more generally about the whole subject, and from what I've read, you know, there is widespread agreement that animal products have a much bigger footprint on land use and water and CO2 emissions. And the logic, to me, just my own logic, it's pretty sound to me that, and you know, the science does back this up, that you know, we're feeding all this plant material to animals, and we're lucky if we're getting. I mean, they said we were getting like a sixth back, but you know, I've seen other stats that say it's like 1 in 10, 1 in 9 that you get back. So
yeah, so they've been generous on that.
Yeah, but game changers, do I think they've exaggerated any of those stats I mentioned? Not sure. Maybe they have, maybe they've not. It's hard to prove if they have. Do I think they've cherry picked the stats for the ones that have got the most dramatic effect? Or present maybe some of them out of context? Definitely yes, I think they would have done. However, it still stands up.
If these stats are true, then we should be worried. So even if it's like what someone mentioned, about 50% stats are correct, we need to be worried. But the thing is, only 2% of the world's water we can drink. If it takes 4,000 liters of water to make 4 kilograms of meat, we need to be worried. But we don't know if these stats are actually made up. That's the thing where if these stats are rock solid, then we should be worried, and it should be implemented through governments, because it doesn't make sense. You don't sell a pound to make a penny. You know what I mean? That's the thing. So that's the bit. If it is true, these stats are correct, we need to be worried massively.
Apply common sense. Andy's Arkham razor. You know, when all else seems reasonable, that's, you know, when you think about it, yeah, all of that sounds pretty fair. And I think the issue is a lot of them, they collect their waste in big pools, and that just seeps into the groundwater and they cover it over. We're not paying for the cost of the meat properly.
It's amazing now the people who are surrounding me. My two friends doing the podcast, family members, are all turning to veganism, and it's made me think different. But I do believe the question is: do we eat too much meat? Yes, big tick in the box. Do we need meat to survive in our diets? Yes, but that's the thing where I think I'm a better person by having meat in my diet, and I've tried different types of plant based foods, but I find that when I use meat, I'm a better person and my mindset's much better.
So my overall message that I've taken from it is that anyone can benefit from eating more fruit and vegetables in their diets. You know, science backs it up. But does it have to be either or, like the documentary's trying to push? I don't think so. There's loads of unhealthy vegans out there, and there's loads of healthy meat eaters. One of the big factors of me staying vegetarian is the fact that the current level of meat consumption is unsustainable for us and the planet. Basically, it's just I've watched too many documentaries lately with my daughter, and it's you just see how the planet's changed in the last few years, never mind decades.
Well, if this is correct, all this information, then we need to be worried. If it's true, we need to be worried.
Yeah, I am worried.
I think that's the point, mate. I think that's what for me, Game Changers. That's the point of the movie. It's saying you need to be worried, and I think as long as it stirs conversation and people take time to think about it, like we all are, and the impacts of of our current trends, and hopefully in time to make changes to them, then as for a set piece like that, then I think it's doing a really good job. I haven't got a problem with it. Good show. I highly recommend it.
Remember what Bruce Lee said: research your own experience, absorb what is useful, reject what is useless. Subscribe and rate this podcast.